Vodkast. Hey, Jeff Manchester here. Welcome to the Vodkast. I've just come. You mentioned if that was the end of my sentence? No. I've just come from seeing Doctor Strange, so I'm all excited about talking about composition and music and movies and all the rest of it. And I'm ready to answer your questions, listen to your mixes. We have quite a few mixes to listen to today, and some plain Jane questions, just emails from some people. If you'd like to email me, I can be reached at vodcastpodcaster@gmail.com. That's how these people that we're going to hear from today got in touch with me. And yeah, I don't do these vodcasts that often. They take a long time to do, and the questions kind of trickle in, and it's just as well because I'm really busy. But the people who are watching them, they are like the lowest viewed videos. I don't really care though. The people who are watching them do seem to be really enjoying them, and questions keep coming in, so I'm not going to stop making them. So yeah, sit tight if I haven't answered your question. It's just because I'm doing other stuff or I'm waiting for more questions to trickle in. But anyway, let's just get right to it. Oh, by the way, I should mention that I spoke with Ian Shepherd. He's a big mastering engineer, and that was a lot of fun. So go check out that video if you have questions about mastering, which some people do. They've written to the podcast for that. So I think you're going to learn a ton, even if you're only sort of, if you have like a pedestrian sort of interest in mastering, you're definitely going to learn something. And for the seasoned pros out there, Ian is approaching dynamics and loudness and all the rest of it from a totally different angle. So there's lots to learn. I've got my Isotope RX whiskey glass. It's not a vodcast like a proper vodka vodcast, but I got some scotch. So let's get to it. So the first question comes to us from Richard. Hey Dick. Hey Jeff, he says, I love the vodcast and your other clips and have found myself learning lots since subscribing. Lately, he says, I've been having trouble getting people to feel anything from my compositions. And frankly, I don't blame them. I write fast, slow, and sometimes emotional pieces, but I don't think they're doing what they're supposed to do. They sound like everything else, and that's maybe the problem. Maybe it's something else. Would appreciate your insights. Thanks very much. Thanks for writing in, Richard. Okay, this is a tricky one. I know what you're talking about. At least I think I do. Sometimes music in isolation, especially film music, when it isn't played live, with you're in a band or something, you have an audience to test it with, or when film music isn't paired with visuals, it's really tough to tell what the emotional weight of it is going to be and if it's actually propelling anything forward. Standalone pieces like product demos that you'd hear on like Spitfire's website or Sonokinetics, they're very punchy and loud or whatever, but if you abstract, let's say, a piece from The Arrival by Johan Johansson, it might sound kind of funny on its own, but when it's paired with something, it's pretty powerful stuff. And I don't know if you're actually composing and putting your things on screen and you find that the feedback you're getting is that people aren't really moved by those pieces. I'm not sure if that's what you're really talking about, but I would say try just find some footage out there online, just maybe steal some footage just for educational purposes, and then write some music to it, and then bring someone over and see what they think, especially if they haven't seen the film before and they're tricked into thinking it's your music. That might be a good way to see if you've got a problem there, or I guess really putting your music to practical use might help you instead of letting it sort of live and die in your headphones or in the headphones of your friends or whoever's listening to it. The other thing I would have to say is, it's funny, I saw this really great movie a while ago called, I think it's called It Felt Like Love. And there's a line in it where this daughter comes home and she's really late and her dad is just like worried about her, and he asks her where she's been and she's like, whatever. And he says, he goes, you don't give a shit, I don't give a shit. And I think that, I'm not saying that you don't give a shit. What I'm saying is maybe some of the passion that you had for writing and some of the stuff that kind of fueled your creativity, maybe it's kind of lacking lately for whatever reason. There's a really good quote by Robert Frost. I'm probably going to have to like paraphrase it, but it's no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. And what that means is, it's if what you're putting into your music is sort of lacking or kind of bankrupt as far as emotion goes or whatever, how can you expect other people to find anything in it either? If you're just sort of going through the motions, and it's kind of like dancing with a partner that doesn't want to dance with you. It's not going to really work. So there's a piece that I made for a feature film, which is going to probably have its premiere soon. I put it on the channel. I did a tutorial for how I made the music. It's called On the Rocks. And there's a piece, you'll hear it in the tutorial. I composed it, and I kind of know what happens to some of the characters after I wrote it, so I was really sad, and I wanted that to be reflected in the piece. And honestly, and I'm an emotionally honest person, when I hear the piece today, it actually does make me really sad. It used to bring me to tears, and that is something I didn't really expect, but I really wrote it to make sure that people knew what was going to happen to this character, or maybe they had a hint of what would happen to this character once the scene progressed and my music stopped, because something really awful happens to someone in that movie. So I wanted to make sure that came across, and I wrote it. It just worked, and it just gave me chills, and I sent it to the directors, and it gave them chills, and it was just one of those moments where I was like, oh my gosh, this is really choking me up, and they felt it too. It just worked once it got to their end. So let that be maybe a lesson for you, or some advice. So no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader, no excitement in the writer, no excitement in the reader. You have to bestow these things and put meaning in them already, and then send them out into the world. And if they don't hit people, that's okay, because they matter to you. And that was my experience. So it's a kind of a personal question, kind of a personal answer. Hopefully that helps you on your way, Richard. Okay, the next question is from Christian. I'm not going to say his last name, Christian A. And he says, hey man, my name's Christian. Sorry. My name's Christian, and I've been interested in becoming an audio engineer. Is there anything you would advise someone to learn before attending school, or things you must know or be familiar with to a certain extent? Also, he writes, do you feel that Pro Tools works better with audio files? ? Okay, I think I understand the first question. The second question is kind of, I'll see if I can answer it adequately, but the first question is, you want to become an audio engineer, and you're asking, do I think it's a good idea, or what do you think I should tell you to learn before you actually attend school, or things to be familiar with? I had someone who asked me a question about this in a previous Vodkast, and they were thinking about going, and they're like, should I know a lot about automation or MIDI? Should I know a lot about how to set up equipment? Should I know a lot about live sound? Blah, blah, blah. The answer is no. I mean, you are already interested in attending post-secondary education in an audio field. So chances are you know stuff, you just don't know that you know it. What I mean by that is, you're already online, you found my channel, you're looking for resources and information about audio engineering. You probably know a lot more than someone who knows nothing at all about audio engineering and wants to be a construction worker. That's a weird job for me to pull out of my head. Anyway, it's like aspiring to be like a landlord, like who aspires to be a construction. Anyway, what I'm saying is, you know a lot, and there's nothing wrong with arming yourself with information, really good information, before you actually attend school. Not so that you can be like the smartest person in the room, but so that you can have a really good foundation upon which to build once new concepts and new stuff kind of comes into your brain when you go to audio school. One of the things that I found was really useful for me was having in place a bunch of projects before I even went to school. Like, I wanted to compose, and so I started doing that like a year and a half before I even went to school. But I didn't really know how to mix very well. I didn't really know how to master very well. I didn't know how to mix and surround and all kinds of stuff. Those things were great learning experiences for me in like an educational context. But knowing how to do some of that stuff, 20% of that 100% that you learn at school, kind of knowing that stuff to begin with is really helpful, because you can just sort of hit the ground running, and you can decide, okay, this is important to me, this is not important to me, this is not important to me, this is super important to me and my goals. I was actually supposed to talk to my school yesterday. I went to a school called Recording Arts Canada here in Toronto. I live in Toronto. And they forgot that they invited me to speak. So I had all kinds of stuff planned to tell them, mostly about how to get jobs and all the rest of it. So forgive me if I'm recycling a little bit of what I would have told the people at RAC, but I'm going to tell you, even though you didn't really ask for it, you said, what should I do? What should I learn before I go to school and all the rest of it? I want to sort of steer this conversation to another place, which is employment, because this is as important. Like, while you're working and developing your skills, you should be doing all those things in an effort to make yourself marketable and in an effort to establish some kind of competitive advantage. What's a competitive advantage? It's something that makes you different from everybody else. When you graduate from audio engineering school, you're going to have ostensibly a diploma, a piece of paper that says you graduated from this place, and a bunch of skills. Depending on how many people, let's say 40 people go to the same program that you do, and maybe it's like war, like maybe only 30 of them make it to the other side, the rest drop out. 30 people are graduating with the exact same set of skills and stuff. So I would say figure out what it is that makes you different from everybody else and become the best that you can at that. Really focus on your competitive advantage, specialize in something and know it really well, so you're not just one of 30 lemmings graduating from audio engineering school. So see what makes you different, focus on that, really cherish it, and master it is one piece of advice. As far as getting a job, in the same vein of this idea that you have 30 of you, sort of matrix like copies marching out of this school with diplomas, you guys are all going to be competing for jobs, and all of you probably have a computer, all of you probably have a sequencer, digital audio workstation, all of you have skills and all the rest of it. What I find people don't have increasingly are communication skills and professionalism. And I'm not kidding. I work with a lot of people. I work with professional people. For example, a lot of you guys, maybe it's no surprise that you've seen my video with Isotope. I'm also working on some demo products for a couple other companies. Sonar just came out with Home Studio, which is a new digital audio workstation. I worked with them, and I came up with an audio demo that's going to be a template. So anyone who downloads Home Studio from Sonar, up pops my template project, which is the song that I came up with, a promo song as well for that company, for that product. So I've worked with professionals, and I can tell you, if you have a phone that doesn't work half the time, if you compose an email with all lowercase letters, if you are visibly and uncontrollably high all the time, if you don't know how to dress yourself in a semi-presentable way, what you are doing is basically wearing a giant sign around your neck that says, I am not someone that you want to work with. I can't tell you how many talented people I see, well-intentioned, well-meaning people, shoot themselves in the foot because they have no understanding of how what they do, what they say, what they wear, and how they wear it. They don't understand the message they're sending into the world. It's so hard to get jobs now, especially in the audio world. I mean, even in the non-audio world, a lot of my friends are unemployed. The ones who are employed are working on a contract basis with no benefits, blah, 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 blah. I understand my parents, their ire and their frustration and their brains exploding when I said, I want to go into audio engineering. Like, it's so hard as it is. Don't make yourself any less marketable by, as I said, being unprofessional, unreliable, blah, blah, blah. I had a friend whose rap album I was working on when I first graduated. I think I even talk about it on the channel. We had to break up just because I couldn't deal with him anymore. I couldn't deal with the lateness, the emails, the infrequency of them, just his whole demeanor. And it was like money. Like there was money coming in and everything, but I'm like, I can't work with someone so unreliable. It's kind of why I really enjoy being a composer, because I work like by myself, mostly for myself. I'm in control of every aspect of the production, so to speak. Boy, are we on a tangent. But anyway, audio engineering school, you probably know a lot more than you think, and you're going to learn a lot too, but what's going to really make you stand out is understanding what it is that makes you different and how to monopolize and capitalize on that. And also professionalism. I get like, Isotope wants a video from me about a new product, and they say the deadline is Friday and they give it to me on a Monday. I have a draft Tuesday afternoon. I'm not kidding. I'll shift everything around so that they go, oh, Jeff just submitted this draft. It's Tuesday afternoon. We're probably not going to get till Wednesday morning, but we gave him till Friday to do it. Now we have all this time to focus on what he's done, send some edits back, blah, blah, blah. And what I'm doing is I'm establishing a reputation as someone who gets things done quickly. I'm establishing that because I want them to think of me the next time they need another video done. And let's say their boss has just, their director of vision has just said, we only have like 72 hours to do this. Like, where's our video? Where's our demo? Jeff can get it done in 48 hours. We've seen him do it before with a week deadline. So you know what I'm saying? Anyway, as for Pro Tools and audio files, you're asking me if Pro Tools handles audio files best. You might learn this in audio school, but every DAW works with a system called PCM, pulse code modulation. They're all the same. Everything sounds, I mean, there's minor differences in, let's say, this is a really controversial issue, but there's minor differences in, let's say, the software, the VSTs and the hardware that comes with, not the hardware, but yeah, the VSTs and some of the EQs and reverbs and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, they all use PCM, so it pumps songs in and out at the same sort of format and sound. So people who say like, oh, Logic has a sound to it that I like, or Ableton doesn't have a good sound, or Pro Tools has the pure, it's like, it's not true. It depends on, whether or not you're enabling dither, and if you're, your bit rate and your sample size and buffer and all the rest of it. But it's all PCM at the end of the day. And anyone who tells you otherwise is, I don't know, maybe they have a special ear or something, but it's all the same as far as the raw mechanics. So your audio file is going to sound exactly the same in Pro Tools and blah, blah, blah. What the difference between those DAWs is, it comes down to workflow. People really love Reaper. That's one of the cheapest DAWs around. I think it's like $70 or whatever. You can do custom scripts and really customize your the shortcuts and the methods you have to, let's say, preview a song and jump ahead or whatever. You can put that into one really quick command and hit, for example, spacebar, and you can do this really complicated automated task that in other DAWs might take you 4 or 5 clicks. People like Ableton because you have a session and an arrangement view, which other DAWs don't have. Some people really love Logic. People have their own sort of preferences, but at the end of the day, those DAWs, the music sounds the same because they're using the same sort of programming language and D to A and A to D conversion. It's all the same. So don't get fooled. But you should learn Pro Tools. Especially if you're going to audio engineering school and you want to get a job in the industry, at some point you will meet Pro Tools, because Pro Tools is, for better or worse, the industry standard, and you're going to have to know how to use it. So, and I'm sure that they will teach you in some ways. Audio engineering schools are like $17,000 Pro Tools courses. I'm just kidding, but anyway, I'm not kidding. Anyway, so hopefully that answers your question, Christian. Let's move on to the next question. Okay. All right. So, question here from Johan Johansson, which I don't know if you know this, but you share the name you share a name with a favorite, one of my favorite composers. He did The Arrival and a whole bunch of other great movies. So, Sicario and stuff. He's great. So, thank you, Johan. I don't know. He says, "Hi Jeff, firstly, I wanted to say that I really enjoy your podcast and YouTube channel. You are great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. A year back, I started to chase my dream of becoming a composer for film and TV. It's going pretty well. Good for you. At the moment, although I am very stressed and worried about the future, mostly for economical reasons, but also since I'm getting stressed about doing 2 minutes of music, I see myself hitting the wall once I finally get to score a full movie." I know what you mean. So it's like 2 minutes is a lot, and the prospect of scoring an entire movie is kind of crazy. My question is, if I've ever felt this way, will it always be like this, or are you more relaxed and calm now than before? Do you have any tips on how to improve your workflow and to really believe that your music is good enough? It's something I think everyone struggles with. What do you do when you can't come up with anything at all and nothing seems to work? Thanks again for your time, and thanks for sharing your thoughts and experience with everyone. And he also says, if you have the time, would you listen to a track I made and have some quick comments on the mixing? And he says his reference was March of the Resistance from the latest Star Wars, The Force Awakens, both composition and mixing wise. So much love, he says. Much love back to you, Johan. Thank you so much for writing. So let's, yes, I will totally play your mix, and we'll have a listen to it. I'll answer your questions in a very long-winded way. Because that's how I do it. So he says, first of all, he says he's kind of overwhelmed at the idea of scoring an entire movie when 2 minutes is like already kind of insane and overwhelming. Yeah, this is a totally natural reaction, but it's kind of like, it's, if I could liken it to something, because I've scored documentaries, oh Jesus, almost dropped the whiskey. I've scored feature films and like a buttload of shorts. With experience and time, it gets more manageable. And keep in mind, the people at the top, like Hans Zimmer, at this point, like it's, I don't think he's even really writing a lot of it. And not to say anything disparaging about him, but people like that have machines behind them. I mean, Martin Scorsese barely directs anymore. He just sits in a chair and tells everyone what to do. So when you reach a certain point in your career and you pass a couple of thresholds, you have an entire machine behind you who are going to help you. Like John Williams, you seem to like Star Wars and all the rest of it. He is a really hands-on guy for the kind of people that are around in this industry. Someone working as a composer at an on an orchestral sort of, with an orchestral sort of vibe, those kind of people, I mean, they submit mock-ups and drafts using like VSTs and software instruments, and then after those drafts are approved, by the way, there's a spotting session before all that with the director. Once the spotting session's done, the drafts and mock-ups begin, and then once those mock-ups are approved, then they make it to an orchestra where a whole bunch of people, audio engineers and all the rest of it, are setting everything up, and they might not even orchestrate them. They might just sort of be there in the background and leave the orchestrating, the waving the stick and all that stuff. They might leave that to somebody else. So the stuff you're doing at this level is really akin to the kind of work that maybe Cliff Martinez is doing, where it's just him and a computer and, well, probably some analog stuff as well, but mostly just a project studio doing everything by himself. My point is, it depends on where you want to go, but you're going to have a lot of help and you're going to have machines behind you as you move forward. But the question is, what do I do now, right? Let's say you're an understudy for a big gig, you're on the list, you're on the short list for a feature film, and they give it to you. What do you do then, right? And you've only scored little things here and there. In my view, it's like, what really helps is having amazing communication with the director or the producer, whoever you're going back and forth with, and really knowing them on a personal level so that you can get feedback that's really useful to you. Sometimes you're working on stuff and it's just, you're just sending off these comments and these demos into this void, right? And because you don't know the people on the other end of it, it's, you get weird passive aggressive language back and all the rest of it. When you have someone that's like, actually, this doesn't work, let's try this. This doesn't work, let's try this. Or why don't we put that on the back burner? It's not quite what I asked for in the notes, but let's move on to the next thing. When you have a nice relationship that's back and forward, the whole project becomes way more manageable to you. That's what I found, at least. And the more you compose, like the reason people always say practice, 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 and even when you're not composing, just write stuff anyway. The reason they're saying that, it's like I was going to say waitress. I'm going to say server. It's like a server. Eventually you get one category of the restaurant and then it's someone else's job to do the other 5. A really amazing server at some point will be able to do the entire room by themselves for the whole night. It's crazy, but once you build up your skills, it might seem like everything's on fire, but it's manageable. You get really good when you practice, when you're doing music all the time. And sometimes it's happened to me before. I'll look at something in the cue sheet. Let's say I'll make 37 minutes compounded worth of film music for a 90-minute feature. And they say, I need something 2 minutes long, blah, 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 blah. And I go, oh, I already composed that piece last year. It's on my hard drive. What I mean by that is, I had that piece kind of floating around. It was an idea, and they've just described it to me. And now I don't have to write anything. Well, if they like it, I don't have to write anything. But I just pull it up from the hard drive, maybe dust it off a little bit, give it a bit of a quick remaster, and send it off and say, is this kind of what you're looking for? And that's happened to me too, where I can just dust off these gems that I wasn't happy with but are totally appropriate and very fitting for the movie that I'm working on, for the project that I'm working on. All this to say, experience is so important. And you get experience by doing stuff and by making mistakes and by being told you suck and try this a different way. So that's what I would have to say. But, it sounds like you're already working and you're composing and you're doing stuff. That's really cool. Keep it up. Compose all the time, 2-3 minutes here and there. And I think you'll be ready and you'll be sort of armed for when someone knocks on the door and says, we need 40 minutes of music for a feature and we only have 2 weeks. It won't be a challenge. It'll be fun. It will be a challenge and it'll be a fun challenge. It won't be like, oh my God, I'm going to go blow my brains out under a bridge. What's the other question you asked? Have I ever felt this way? Yes, I have. Will it always be like this? I think I've answered that. Do I have any tips on how to improve my workflow and really believe my music is good enough? And what do I do when I can't come up with anything at all and nothing seems to work? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions here. Alcohol. No, not alcohol. Although sometimes composing under the influence is a lot of fun, as long as you're not, being obnoxious and really loud and you sort of lose track of the fact that you've got people living on the other side of you and all the rest of it. But do I have any tips for improving workflow and all that other stuff? I actually did. I'm going to link you to a video. I'm going to put a link right now. A video which basically speaks to how to get inspired and how to stay focused on projects and that kind of stuff, and how to believe that your stuff sounds good, all the stuff you're talking about. I recorded, it was one of my first videos, and it's unedited. It's just me talking for like 25 minutes, and I think you should go check that out and listen to it, because it sounds like it's speaking to a lot of the questions that you have, Johan. So I would do that. I would go and listen to that video, and then if you still have problems, write me again, vodkastpodcast@gmail.com. But that should be like a really good start for you. Okay, let's listen to your track, March of the Resistance. Oh, no, that's not what it is. It's the Templars March. That's right. That's what it is. And then I'll give you some thoughts on mixing and all the rest of it, okay? Okay, thank you so much for sending that in. Templars March, especially in Wave. Good sound quality is important. Now, I don't really have a lot to say mixing-wise about this song. My main issue with it is that it's kind of like this thing with... It's like this kind of doll with like a hair isn't out of place and everything is kind of perfect, and I think it could use a little bit of like whimsy and just something to make it more realistic. It sounds like this very sort of tightly produced I don't want to say synthetic, but there's something that doesn't come across as authentic about it. And I don't know if that's necessarily the strings and samples that you're using or whatever, but things just sound very sort of tightly wound and kind of perfect, and in an uncanny valley sort of way. If you don't know what that is, Google it, because I can't explain it very well. But it's just too kind of safe. As far as the arrangement goes, it's great. And you seem to have a good grip on when certain instruments should come in and where they should come in and all that stuff. So mixing wise, I don't really have that much to say, but there's something about it that could use a little bit. It needs to relax a little bit. And I think the ways in which you could do that are really easy and kind of infinite. Like, how do I make this more clear? There's a really good article I read about these people who were trying to fool other people. They made these robots and they would put a curtain up, and these people, human beings, would talk to the robots and the robots would talk back, and they try to see if they could fool people into thinking they were actually communicating with a human being when in fact it was a robot. And one of the things that always gave away that it was a robot was that they didn't program the robots to have any sort of verbal cues. So for example, I would talk to you and I'd say, Johan, I think that you're just kind of not what's the word? Getting it. And the robot would say, Johan, I think you're just not kind of getting it. See the difference? The difference is I stopped. I said, I just kind of smacked my lips. I thought about it for a couple minutes. I said maybe once or twice. Those little imperfections made the performance more real. People could always tell that it was a robot because real people stop and think about what they're going to say next and how they're going to say it, and don't always have everything marching out perfectly, one word after the next. So I would find ways to make your productions a bit more vulnerable. I know that if a defense maybe on your end would be, well, if you listen to John Williams stuff, it sounds just like that. And to an extent it kind of does, but I would bet you that it doesn't always sound like that because you have real human beings playing those instruments and they don't hit the strings in the same way every single time. And a way that you could recreate that would be through automation and through quantization and making certain passages sort of maybe a little looser with quantization, not quantizing everything to the 30 to the 16th note or the 32nd note or whatever quantizing you're doing or whatever. Reverb and fader throws, weird time signatures, things sort of stretching and then stopping and then using delay to create space and then suck everything back. Adding authenticity to the performance, I think, is what you need to do for your next sort of composition. Add some, not mistakes like instruments out of tune or anything, but I think you can introduce some human characteristics, some imperfections, in an effort to make your compositions sound as though they weren't sort of dialed up in that little thing with the perforations on it that we put like a toy music box or whatever. Now, I don't want to hurt your feelings or anything. I think there's a lot of skill here, and the way you do your stuff, it's clear that you have a really good grip on arrangement. Like I said before, instruments, when and where they should come in and everything, and it does sound very John Williamsy. That's really cool. But really study orchestration, real live orchestras. People don't hit all the strings at the same time. Horn players, they take a second to breathe every now and then, right? Because they're blowing into their instruments. These things make the performances human, and I think making your performances more human with some of the tricks and tips that you have, the tricks and stuff that you have in your DAW, is what's going to help you bring your productions, which are already really great, to another level. So that would be my tip for you. Okay. So the next question comes from Jacob Thompson. He writes, not sure if you've done this already, but couldn't find a video covering it. Could you do a video on how to get started? For instance, you have for instance, have a background in music and know my theory and everything, but I'm unsure how to get started in the business part of it. I'm thinking here of, quote, reaching out to potential clients, getting your first assignment, showing your work, and so on. Enjoying your channel, has a lot of awesome information on it. Thanks very much. Also, if this could be included, if you see fit, what DAW you recommend and sound plugins you think are the most important as a beginner. Someone beginning in film composition. Thanks again for the awesome content, Jacob. Thanks so much for writing, Jacob. Okay, let's get to this, because this is actually a really cool question. By the way, I'm just going to jump ahead and say that stuff that people, beginners should get in the composing world. I did a video on that a couple of videos back. I'll link to it now. And you can just go and click that, and you can find that video. It's like the 5 essential things that I use all the time, and I think you guys should too. And some of these things might still be on for Black Friday or Cyber Monday or the holidays or whatever, so it's probably still there. And Native Instruments has a whole bunch of stuff half price now, so check that out. So you say reaching out to clients and all the rest of it. I'm going to repeat a little bit of what I said to the previous question asker, in that it really matters a lot, and I'll add a little bit, so don't skip ahead, but it really matters a lot how you come across, how you compose your emails, how you present yourself, how you string a sentence together, all the rest of it. Those things really go a long way. It might be the difference between you and someone else getting the job if, let's say, you used a couple of capital letters every time you start a sentence, and you reply to emails on time, and you give the impression that you're really interested. One of the things I would say business-wise that would help is, we live kind of in this incredible age of information. I can go and look up a whole bunch of stuff on LinkedIn about people I'm working for, and really get to know them on that level and know everything about them, where they were and all the rest of it. And I can fire off emails, nonstop, but I can also find out where they work. And what I mean by that is, I would say that if you're going to apply for a job, if, let's say, music production company X is hiring down the street, or there's an advertisement for an intern or whatever, and you have to apply online, sure, but go to LinkedIn, find out who the people are, find out where the address is, print off a resume, and go there in person. Knock on the door. If it's locked or whatever, come back another time. If, just follow someone in the building. I used to do the census. You just follow people in. If you look like you know where you're going. Anyway, do it in person. Why? Because it's so much harder for people to say no to your face. We live in this time when you can just fire off emails. It's very seductive, and it's, you spell check and all the rest of it. Everyone gets an email. Show up in person. Pretend like you're going to church on Christmas or something. Dress semi-nicely. And, chew some gum and just spit out the gum, but just breath, you know what I mean? And hand in a resume and introduce yourself, and you look at their name, and oh, hey, it's Cynthia so-and-so, and you go, okay, I know you were, okay, cool, whatever, and ask them questions about what they do, even though you already know what they do, and, like, really pretend like you really care, like you really want to be there. If you want a job, you should know something about the place you want to work, and I think that with the internet and all the rest of it, there's so much research to be done that when you go up in person, you know what the last product it was that these guys put out, you know who their clients were, you really show a lot of interest, and that's what people want. That's what people want when they're hiring someone. They want someone that's going to fit right into the team, and that can be you, I think, if you do your research and show up in person, because as I said before, it's way harder for people to say no to your face. People are really, people can be kind of mean online, right? So go in person, present yourself. I think that goes a long way. What DAW do I recommend? I mean, I started with Ableton. I'm kind of moving to Logic now just because it works better with picture and it's more flexible MIDI-wise. And my computer seems to like it a lot more. But I don't know. There's Ableton, there's Reaper, there's Project One, is it? Project One. No, I don't know what it's called. There's Sonar. There's a whole bunch of. There's Bitwig. I mean, the list is sort of endless, but I would say the ones that I see the most often popping up for film composing would be Digital Performer, which I don't know. I didn't like it very much, so I don't know. But Digital Performer is one. Logic is another one. I see a lot of people using Ableton, believe it or not. That's what Daniel James uses, although he's using Cubase now, I think, or he's using both of them. So Cubase may be on your radar as well. Do some research, see what people use, see what you like. A lot of these companies have like trial periods. You can just try it out and see how you like it and move on. So that's what I would say. Play the field, take a couple girls out on a date and see which one you like and stick with that one and pay for it. Now that I've done some beta testing and I know some of these big companies, it really humanized the process, and you get to meet some of the people whose livelihoods depend on people buying licenses to these software products. So, save some money, maybe don't go drinking all the time, and buy it. That's what I have to say about that. Okay, so I have another question here from Stephen F. And he says, "Hey Jeff, in the interest of time, if you need to show some content, I will offer this up for review." And he's linked a SoundCloud link here called Emergency Exit. He says, "Is a TV production cue. I use cinematic strings, MIDI CC to switch between staccato phrases, blah, 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 blah. I did some subtle EQ on the strings and used CS2 cinematic string to choose mix mode for blend of close and room mics and reverb fairly dry. The rest of the sounds are addictive keys, Omnisphere 2, drum samples, etc. My rig is Cubase 7.5, M-Box Pro 3. It's very okay. Yamaha HS80s, his 8s. Let me know if you need an uncompressed version for the cue. Thanks again." So let's have a listen to Emergency Exit. Okay. Thanks so much for sending that in, Stephen. Very moody and atmospheric, loop-based, it sounds like. Things sort of build and we sort of get stacked over and over and over. Very cool. I would say that it sounds like the strings that you're using, it sounds like you might have a quantization issue. There's like a ba-da-da-dum, bum, ba-dum, ba-da-da-dum. One of those, it sounds like some of the notes are kind of stacked on top of each other, at least to my ears anyway. And they might need to be separated in the MIDI. So maybe have a listen again, just put it on a loop and solo it and listen over and over and over. You'll find that, at least I find that it's somewhat, those notes are sort of inelegantly stacked. They're kind of like, and they should be ba-da-da-da-da-da, but they're kind of stumbling over each other. The other thing is, it sounds like there's a lot, just to me, I don't know if this is a computer thing or whatever, it sounds like there's a lot of, like things are very compressed and very tight. I'm not really hearing a lot of variation between the instruments. I don't know if this is a master bus compression issue, if you have a compressor on maybe individual channels or whatever. If I was getting this as a mastering engineer and you asked me to master it, I would ask these questions. I would say, is there a limiter? Is there compression? Are you putting everything into a bus and then compressing a lot of it? Because I feel like the track is kind of losing some of its dynamics. Everything sounds a little squished, and I'm wondering if you could maybe reverse some of those things and maybe free up some of the space a little bit so that the drums can kind of breathe and those string stabs can kind of be a bit more impactful and the pads can maybe soar and flow a little bit. Because right now that's what I'm getting. But on the good side, I think the track evolves really well. There's some great synth work there in Omnisphere 2, clearly. I say clearly, maybe using something else. I think you said that you were using it. So I think it progresses really nicely, but I find that the way that you have it set up with the drums and those string notes, the drums are very quantized. We're moving in like a 1, 2, ba-da-da-dum, bum, 3, 4, ba-da-da-dum, bum, 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 blah. It sort of stumbles and it sort of jars me, and I gotta. So maybe, you know what you could do? This would be a little tip. Bring someone else into the room and see if they hear what I'm hearing. And often when you do that, like I think the guys on UBK Happy Fun Time Hour have talked about this too. The minute you bring someone else into the room to listen to your track, you're going to notice things too. You're going to hear it differently. I don't know what it is, but it's almost like when you're training. You know what I mean? You're running around a track and suddenly a bunch of, you bring a couple people to come and see you. You just run differently. A couple scouts show up and you're like, oh my God, I've been doing this weird thing with my leg, or I'm not breathing properly. I need to, it just, things change. Perception changes the way that you perceive your own stuff. Sounds very smart. Whatever. So think about that. Bring someone else into the room and see if any of what I'm saying is making sense. The compression, the mixing stuff, that might be totally subjective and maybe you're not doing any of that. But I would say that some of those notes need to be better separated, better quantized, so that we're hearing all of them, well, relative to all the other ones. But outside of that, I think, it's something this track is something I could definitely see hearing on like network television, Jack Bauer style, going through some sort of sewer system to find his daughter. Anyway, is that 24? I don't know. But no, it sounds like you've got the mood established and the tension is established, and now it's just about separating some of those notes, in my mind anyway. Take it or leave it. Yeah, thanks for writing in. Okay, so this question is from Kiefer Corvin. That's a very cool name, I think. Just me. He goes, hi, first of all, thanks a lot for your work. It's been really helpful. You're welcome. Then I have some questions, he says. He's like, let's just stop with the platitudes. I have some questions. My band did a talent show in my university. We came up third. Good job. Winner's prize, I think prize you mean to say, was a studio recording. Then a guy from a jury contacted us and said he really liked our style and thought it would go well in his movie. I think I know where this is going. But he is a small independent guy with no funds. Yeah, I was right. And said he wouldn't be able to pay us, but he would pay for the recording and give us the rights for our songs if we let them use it in his film. Should we take it, he says? Also, what are your thoughts on quantization? Should we quantize everything we can or just some of it or nothing? And then he's also attached a mix, which we'll listen to. My mix is attached in the email. It is unfinished as I'd like to still work on the structure and details and add some lyrics to it. Pretty rhythmic on the verse, rap-like with pitch, and then regular singing on the chorus, but I don't have a mic. Ha 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 ha. What do I think of the style? Could it be popular? Ooh, I don't think I'm the right person to ask about that one. I wasn't very popular, ever. Mix-wise, is there anything obvious I'm missing? This is my first serious mix, so I'm still trying to figure things out. Are the drums too brutal? I try to make the ending interesting, but is it too brutal? What about the intro? Is it too long? Thanks a lot. I hope you can find the time to answer some of these. P.S. I released the in MP3 format. Kind of changes the mix, especially the bass, and is too loud, blah, 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 blah. So let's get to your first question here. Should you give this guy, this independent guy with no money who said he would record you, and he'd give you the rights to your songs if he would... Is he going to record you? He'd pay for the recording. Oh, he'd pay for the... I don't get it. Like, he'd pay for the songs. I think you're saying he'd pay for the songs. He wouldn't record you, but he'd pay for the songs. And then you would have the rights to... Or he would be able to put it in his movie. And he'd pay for the songs, and you guys would own the songs or whatever. I don't know if you're in the States. If you're in the States, it's ASCAP. Okay, and these guys, you give, I think it's free to sign up, you give them your songs, and they protect them for you, just in case this guy with no money, who will pay you for your songs, which is kind of sketchy, if I'm understanding you, he'll pay you for your songs, if he can use them in your movie, and, am I reading that properly? No funds, he wouldn't be able to pay us, but he would pay for the recording and give us the rights for our songs. I don't understand what he's paying for. My bad. I'm Canadian. I don't get it. Okay. He has no money and he wants your music. That's all you should be thinking about right now. Would you give your music to someone for their film? The questions I would be asking if I were you is, what's the movie about? Is he going to make money from the movie? Does he plan on distributing the movie? Does he plan on... These are questions you should ask him, by the way. Does he plan on putting the movie in festivals? Which festivals? He's taking your music for free, it seems, if I'm understanding you, and I'm not. He's taking your music and just... He's like, can I have your stuff? That's all this is. Can I have your stuff? It'll be a great chance at exposure for you, blah, 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 blah. Does that sound like a good idea? If it does, then go ahead. You can always give him your songs, register them. In Canada, it's SOCAN. In the States, it's ASCAP. I don't know what it is in the UK, but that way your songs are protected in case this guy who doesn't want to pay you for any music but wants your music in his film decides to take your songs and make money off them somehow, or makes a whole bunch of money, and then when he has to distribute the film and they source all the material, he says, oh yeah, these songs are mine. Then you're protected. That's what I'd do. And no, sending yourself a letter with an MP3 or with a USB stick addressed to you is not enough to prove that those songs came from your computer and your mind, your intellectual property. You have to register them. And it's often free, at least in Canada with SOCAN it is. And they keep track of who's playing the songs and where they're being played, so you get the royalties. But
This doesn't sound like a very good idea to me, but far be it from me to tell you what to do with your life. If it sounds like a good idea to you, it's been some time since you wrote me, so maybe, I don't know, maybe you've already said yes to them. Those are my thoughts. Thoughts on quantization. Should we quantize everything, or can just some of it be quantized or nothing? It depends what you're writing. Quantization is tempting to use on everything because that's the kind of world that we live in now, where we can perfect everything from, a detuned note on a guitar to a bad vocal to a really awful drum performance. That's why we have really bad singers, really crappy drummers, really bad guitar players. I'd say if you're going to perform, let's say a drum event, a drum performance, try and get it right in the room. You're making everyone's job easier. You're making the band's job easier. They can play with you better. You're making the engineer's job easier, and you're saving yourself money because there will be less to do when you have to quantize those drums. If you're getting a track mixed, which a lot of people do, mixing is the thing. If you have a bad vocal performance and you can't sing, if you not being able to sing very well is part of your thing, that's cool. But vocal tuning costs money too. And if you can avoid paying that money by delivering a very good, consistent performance in the room, just like the drum analogy, then yeah. When it comes to music, sometimes, like I was telling the other guy that did the Star Wars kind of theme music, sometimes you don't want a lot of quantization, because quantization usually makes it sound like a kind of robot was behind the drum kit. But sometimes you want to make it sound like a human being was behind the drum kit or the timpani or whatever it is. And sometimes looser quantization can deliver a more authentic and human performance. So maybe that's what you want, depending on the kind of music you're making. So I would say quantization is really up to you, but the benefits of it are really dependent on the work you're doing. And I would say quantization is something to be used wisely, and it's context specific. In this case, I don't really know what the context is, but quantization can go either way. It can add a lot of professionalism and tightness to your performance or your audio or whatever it is, or it can add a lot of humanity to it. So it's up to you to decide how to use it and how you want to use it. Next, your song. Why don't we have a listen to it, and I'll get to some of your questions and see if we can answer them. So let's have a listen to your mix and see if it's brutal or not. Okay, thanks so much for sending that in. I have a couple thoughts. The drums aren't brutal per se. I feel like that kick drum, you talked about quantization earlier. The kick drum, the drums definitely need to be tightened up, especially when everything sort of comes in and we get the drums and everything else. We have that guitar sort of, great tone, by the way, really well recorded as far as I can tell. It sounds like the guitar and some of the real world stuff that's happening, that's where your strong suit is. And the rest of it, the more electronic stuff, while I like the contrast of those two things, I think it's going to be up to you to really hone in on how to make the most of your DAW and your software to really sort of bring that same level of authenticity and realness to all the external stuff, all the synthetic stuff that's happening, because the guitar tone is great. It's nice and lazy. It's got a nice vintage sort of vibe to it. I'm not going to say lo-fi. It's not lo-fi. It's got just a really nice sort of, I don't know, there's a great tone to the guitar. Let's complement it with all the other stuff too, because right now it sounds like the guitar is where it's at and everything else is sort of barely keeping up with it. Quantizing. We got to quantize got to find a way to quantize that kick drum, which is a little bit, I'm not saying it's brutal, which were your words, but it's definitely very powerful. You can shape it in such a way as to reduce some of the impact of the kick drum. You could find another kick drum. You could play with the attack, for example. I don't know what kick drum you're using, but playing with the attack might soften a little bit. EQing maybe a little bit of the low end out, maybe adding a little bit of snap to it in the high end, maybe at like 700 hertz, 500 hertz, just adding a shelf filter, maybe bring it up a little bit. Might help not soften it, but give it a bit more definition and take away some of the punch from the low end if you're carving a little bit out there. But quantizing it, especially with the hi-hat and everything else and the snaps, so that when everything comes together, it really gels. And quantizing it in a human way, like I was saying before, I think this track could benefit from some of that. So, but the guitar is beautiful. It's really great. It's got a nice lazy vibe. I can see why you might have been approached by someone at the Battle of the Bands thing, because there's definitely a sound here. And I imagine that it sounds really great live, and then when you go and bring it into your DAW, you're just like, oh my goodness, you know? So I would say watch tutorials on whatever DAW you're using, learn how to quantize effectively, and I think you're on your way to building your skills as a composer and arranger, because the arrangement is here, but there's something about the sluggish nature of the drums, the way they don't quite keep up with everything, needs to be tightened, and I think you can do it. So that would be my 2 cents on your song. Hopefully that helps. Thanks for sending it in. I am going to leave it there. I have a couple other people I know that have been waiting. I decided to get to the people who've been waiting a really long time, like since like October, to answer me, or for an answer from me. I'll do another vodcast where I swear I will review some tracks going forward in the future. Probably, that didn't make any sense. I'll review some tracks probably in January. I think there's 2 people I just couldn't get to, and this is probably going to be a really, really super long episode. So Vodkast 8 in the new year, I swear I will get to your mix reviews and stuff. Thanks to everyone who wrote in. If you want to hear your answer, your question answered, vodcastpodcaster@gmail.com. That's where to reach me. It takes me a while to get to them, but I do get to them. Thanks everyone for watching. Really appreciate anyone who wrote in a question. I will get to the questions, as I said, later in the year, I promise. This is just a super long episode. Yeah, have a great Christmas, holiday season, blah, 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 blah. And thanks for watching. Okay, bye.